Bohr's theory of hydrogen atom. So the Bohr's theory of hydrogen atom predicts that the four postulates. The first one is, in an atom there is a nucleus in middle and this is the atom. Now the atom size, what is the atom size means? 10 to the power of minus 10 meter. What is atom? An indivisible particle. When you are not able to devise a particle, if the particle size is exactly at 1 angstrom of diameter or 10 to the power of minus 10 meters of the diameter, if a particle, then that particle is indivisible. That means it is an atom. Now this atom contains basically two parts. One is electron cloud and another one is nucleus. The electron cloud is formed the surrounding of nucleus. The nucleus portion is the middle of the atom. Now, why the electrons are revolving around the nucleus? So the Bohr first postulate says the electrons are revolving around the nucleus in a circular orbits. So why and what kind of forces are making the electrons revolving around the nucleus? Something forces acts on the electrons to revolve around the nucleus. So let me make a small look on the electron, why it is revolving around the nucleus. First I would like to consider here if it is an electron. If it is an electron, now this electron is nothing but negative charge, here it is positive charge. These two particles are in three-dimensional arrangement. That means the particle is like this. Now if it is an electron, as according to electron definition, the electrical forces of lines are in all directions because it is in three-dimensional. That electrical forces of lines are collecting, that means inward to its center. So that means the electrical forces of lines are like this. It is a two-dimensional board, so that's why it is I mentioned like this, but the electrical forces of lines are in this direction, in three-dimensional. This is X, this is Y, this is Z. So in three-dimensional the electrical forces of lines are, it is like this. Now in middle part of the nucleus is also having the same nature in three-dimensional. The electrical forces of lines are there, but that electrical forces of lines are emitting. So now you have to imagine the electrical forces of lines carefully. If the electrical forces of lines is collecting, now this is emitting. So here the emitting force of lines like this. Now this emitted force of lines makes like this. Now this electrical forces of lines which is making the emission, it is collecting. So it will pull the electron towards to in this direction. Now if it will comes to in this direction, now again it will pulls like this. So now this electrical forces of lines. So the electrical forces of lines are continuously pulling the neighbor of the electrical forces of lines is caused by the Coulombic attraction force. Coulombic attraction force is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q square by R square. This force exerts on the electron continuously. Due to that reason, it will attract the electron towards to the nucleus. In this way, this force is called as a Coulombic attraction force, and it will makes to move. Which will makes the moving of an electron? Coulombic attraction force. By the which one? By the electrical forces of lines continuously. Now due to the cause of that, the electron is started to revolve around the nucleus continuously. Now this electron, that means this electron is continuously moving in this direction by creating the centrifugal force. So the centrifugal force will be generated by the circular motion. Now the centrifugal force is F is equals to mv square by r. So there is a centrifugal force in outward direction, there is a Coulombic attraction force which is an inward direction. So it is an inward force, which is Coulombic attraction force is what kind of force in atom? It is an inward force. What is centrifugal forces? Centrifugal forces is an outward force. When this inward force and outward forces are equal, then there is a orbit that created for an electron to revolve around the nucleus. So why the electron is revolving around the nucleus? First question. Why electron revolve around the nucleus? Why electron revolves? Number one, there is why the electron revolve? Because of Coulombic attraction force. because of Coulombic attraction force. It is coulombs. Number 2. How the orbit is forming? By equalizing the Coulombic attraction force and centrifugal force. So by equating these two forces only, the electron is created on orbit. This is the Bohr first postulate. The electrons are revolving around the nucleus in a circular orbit. Now this is the condition for that. Now the second postulate, in this orbit, the electron is revolving continuously. Up to revolving the electron in the orbit, the electron will not gain the energy and it will not lose the energy. So that's why that orbits are called stationary orbits. It is called stationary orbits. Now, while the electron is revolving around the nucleus, it has some angular momentum. It has some angular momentum. So, if an electron wants to revolve, it is having Coulombic attraction force, so it is in attraction. If electron is free, then only it will start to rotate around itself. If the electron is free, it has a possibility to rotate around itself. If which particle is able to rotate around itself, then that particle is free. If free particle is rotating around itself, it produces spin. That means if a spinning particle only can rotate around any one object. Listen carefully. If electron is not having spin orientation, then this electron is not able to rotate around the nucleus. If the electron is having spin orientation, then it has the possibility to rotate around the nucleus. So that means the electron is revolving around itself. So then it has a spin quantum number. Now this spin quantum number having the electron, then it will get the angular momentum, that is called angular quantum number. Now it has angular momentum around the nucleus in this path. So that angular momentum is equals to nh by 2 pi, where n is the integral and h by 2 pi is the constant of 2 pi means what? From here to here it is for pi, and for this electron is pi and this proton is pi, pi plus pi 2 pi. So it is in circular motion, so that's why you can consider from here to here pi first half and here to here second half pi. So that's why 2 pi, and h is the Planck's quantum Planck's constant, which is 6.63 into 10 to the power of minus 36 joules per second. So this is the angular momentum. That angular momentum formula mvr is equals to nh by 2 pi. This is the Bohr's second postulates. And then the third one is the electron will emit the radiation. The electron will emit the radiation when the electron jumps from the higher energy level to lower energy level. That means E2 minus, that means E2, that means higher energy level to lower energy level. See, E2 to E2 minus E1 is equals to h nu. So this is the emitted radiation from higher energy level E2 and this is lower energy level E1. So from E2 minus E1 it will produce h nu radiation. And find the radius of the orbit. We know that angular momentum mvr is equals to nh by 2 pi. From the Bohr postulates, orbital angular momentum. So angular momentum mvr equal to nh by 2 pi. From this, v is equals to nh by 2 pi into this mr I've written here. So this is the value of v. We know that from the Coulombic attraction force is equals to centrifugal force. We know that Coulombic attraction force is equal to centrifugal force. From this, we have an equation 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q square by r square. This is the Coulombic attraction force. Centrifugal force mv square by r. Now I am going to substitute this v value in this equation. Then m by r into this v place, I am writing nh by 2 pi mr. So nh by 2 pi into mr whole square. Now here it is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q square by r square. Now simply here 1 r and here 1 r will be gets cancelled. Now here m into n square and h square, I am making the square. So 4 pi square m square and here it is r square. Now 1m and here 1m gets cancelled. Now here n square h square by 4 pi square m r square. Here it is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q square by r. So now here r and here r square. So here 1r and here 1 square will be gets cancelled. Now this r I am going to send in LHS side. Now r is equals to, now this total LHS term will go for the RHS side. Now r will becomes now 4 pi epsilon naught by q square. This 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, 4 pi epsilon naught by q square. Q square by 4 pi epsilon naught becomes 4 pi epsilon naught by q square. Now the remaining term I am going to write as usually n square h square by 4 pi square m. That's it. Because here only one r, that r becomes RHS side. Now here see 4 pi and here 4 pi. Here still 1 pi is there, and now here epsilon naught. And now n square h square epsilon naught by m pi q square is the radius of n. So here it is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught becomes 4 pi epsilon naught, and q square will becomes q square, n square h square same, and 1 pi square and 1 pi will get cancelled. The remaining term will becomes radius of orbit. If n equal to 1, it is first orbit. If n equal to 2, it is second orbit, like that. Now velocity of revolving electron. Now here we need to substitute the radius value in orbital angular momentum. So orbital angular momentum mvr is equals to nh by 2. Here I have to substitute the r value. The previously we know that orbital radius we find that is mv. In our place we know that n square h square epsilon naught by m pi q square. This is the value of the radius. In previously we find out that we substituted here, and now here nh by 2 pi as usual. Now we need to find the velocity of revolving electron. So here we have an velocity, so we need to find this velocity. Now by making the segregations of this relation, v is equals to nh by 2 pi. Similarly, now this total terms, LHS terms, I am going to send it in RHS. Now see here, m pi q square by m n square h square epsilon naught. Now here the cancellation possibilities of nh will be gets cancelled, m and m gets cancelled, and 1 pi and 1 pi gets cancelled. So now v is equals to q square by 2 n h epsilon naught. So this is the velocity of the electron while it is revolving in the orbit. Now we are going to find about the orbital frequency of an electron. So the orbital frequency of electron f is equals to, the orbital frequency of electron f is equals to 1 by t. But we know that the time period t is equals to 2 pi by omega. So here 2 pi by omega becomes 2 pi by, here v is equal to r omega, therefore omega is equal to v by r. So 1 by omega means v by r becomes r by v. So here time period t is equals to 2 pi r by v. Then frequency f is equals to 1 by t means v by 2 pi r. Now we know that the v value that we are going to substitute 1 by 2 pi r into q square by 2 nh epsilon naught. Now here we are going to make it as a calculation, q square by 4 pi nhr epsilon naught. See here q square term say 2 into 2 4 and pi nhr epsilon naught. So this is the frequency of the electron while it is revolving in the orbit. And we need to find the kinetic energy of the electron. The kinetic energy of the electron means, we know that the kinetic energy formula, kinetic energy is equal to half mv square. So here it is on half mv square. This is equal to half m. V square means, here we know that v value we are going to substitute. q square by 2nh epsilon naught whole square. This implies 1 by 2m q power 4 by 4 n square h square by epsilon naught square. This implies half m. This half m we are multiplying means that directly m q power 4 by 8 n square h square epsilon naught square. This is the kinetic energy of an electron when it is revolving in the orbits. Potential energy of an electron. That means the potential energy of an electron V into minus E, where E is the electric potential for the charge of minus. That means electron. Where here V is equals to electric potential. Electric potential formula 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q by R. Here Q is minus Q, where electron is I considered as minus Q. Then it will becomes as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught minus Q square by R. Here R is the radius of the electron. That means the radius of the orbit where the electron is revolving in the orbit. So that's why the R is the radius of the electron. Orbit. So Rn is equals to, we previously find out that n square h square epsilon by m pi q square. So that is the radius of the orbit that we are going to substitute here. Then see 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught minus q square. This is R. 1 by orbit means it will be reverse. So that means m pi q square by n square h square epsilon naught. This is the value. Now here in this value, just making the simplification, minus q square, it will becomes as m pi minus m pi q power 4. And here 1 pi and here 1 pi will be maybe cancelled. Now here in denominator 4 pi epsilon naught n square h square epsilon naught. Now see here epsilon naught, here I am going to write as epsilon naught square. Now here 1 pi gets cancelled. Now the potential energy becomes minus m q power 4 by 4 n square h square epsilon naught. This is the potential energy formula. Now this is the potential energy formula, and now this is the kinetic energy formula. Now what will be happen for the total energy of an electron in the orbit? Now we are going to find the total energy. Total energy means what? Potential energy plus kinetic energy, or kinetic energy plus potential energy. Here the bigger one is kinetic energy, so that's why I am writing first m q power 4 by 8 n square h square epsilon naught. Here potential energy is minus, so minus m q power 4 by 4 n square h square epsilon naught. So here the total terms are same, so that becomes, here I am taking common m q power 4 by n square h square epsilon naught, and here it is 1 by 8 minus 1 by 4. Now it will becomes as m q power 4 by n square h square epsilon naught. Now it is 4 minus 8, 4. So 4 minus 8, 4 8s are 32, and now m q power 4 by n square h square epsilon naught. So it becomes as, here it is the bigger value already we've written, so minus 4 by 32 means 4 1s are 4 8s are, so 1 by 8. So this is the total energy.